to post-grad semantics. We have another segment for you today, and you are witnessing a crazy surprise event. Emi and I are both wearing glasses, and we're
that never happens.
We're going to be wearing them all through our segment, Thumbing Through, where we review the book 50 Shades of Grey.
It's one of those books that's gotten talked about so much that I just, as a person who reads books, I felt like I at least had to read it and like see what all the fuss is about.
I actually had a friend who told me when I was talking to her about the book, I was like, I bought it, I haven't read it yet, I'm going to read it eventually. I was like, is it as crazy as everyone says it is? And she was like, no, it's not that crazy. It's stuff everyone's done. I mean, unless you're a housewife who doesn't do anything. And I read the book and I'm like, I suddenly know a little bit too much about your sex life. Like, it's a book that's getting everyone talking and everyone, like, reading, which I think is amazing. I don't think it was well written, though. I mean, it makes me feel really bad to say that, because as a writer, like, I totally understand writing shitty things. I write shitty stuff all the time. But, I mean, really was not super good.
Caitlin and I are fans of Twilight, and we get a lot of flack for that. We don't think it's the greatest literature that ever existed, or we don't even think that it's, particularly well written. But it's not, like, as bad as I think people make it out to be. And 50 Shades of Grey, is getting a similar reaction that Twilight did, where people are like, oh God, it's so horrible. Why does anyone like this? Blah, blah, blah. But I feel like on the writing front, 50 Shades of Grey might deserve that a little bit more than Twilight did. But
I don't even think Twilight is written that badly. I mean, I read a lot of young adult fiction, non-fiction. I really like it. Some of it is well written, some of it's not. I did not think Twilight was on the very low end of that spectrum of badly written young adult books. And, I think it is in part the narrative arc of the story. Is there an interesting story? Do they stick with it? But then writers can, if they're focused on the craft enough, they can minimize the distractions that jolt you out of the story. Like if you have one or two words that you just love to use for whatever reason, and they pop up like every chapter, like the same word that not a lot of people use, and you're like, wow. Or if they like have this weird plot thing, or a character talks out of character, and you're like, oh, she wouldn't say that. Or if you don't understand why a character is doing something, and you're like, that doesn't make sense to me, why is she doing that? Then that's a
they're like inconsistencies jolt me out of the story. Yeah, definitely.
For me, like, the good literature is the stuff that brings you somewhere else. Like, it pushes you forward in a way. Like, it makes you see the world differently. You learn something from it. You feel like you've just learn something. Like when you read Moby Dick, you come out of it knowing so much more than you went in. Not just about human nature in the world, but I mean, there's a lot of vocabulary in there that you didn't know before. And the sentence structure is really complex. The story structure is really complex. You come out of that like you just worked out your brain hardcore. It frustrates me that the story that's always getting told is this innocent girl who's never had sex before, and then she meets this magnetic man, and she loses all self-control, and he teaches her to be a woman, but also makes her hate herself all the time. It's like, why do people want this story? Why do people want this story so bad? I don't understand it.
And I wonder to myself, too, because I didn't know what else was out there that was maybe similar to 50 Shades of Grey. I was like, oh, well, at first I was like, this is kind of cool because it's opening up like a new kind of book for people, but it's not. There are lots of other choices out there that have, I think, stronger female characters.
There's something about like if we think about it, we've got Sookie Stackhouse. She's a virgin and, needs to be saved all the time.
Yeah.
And she's got this problem, and I think a psychologist would just love to get a shot at this, but I mean, she's got this problem that makes her not feel worthy of love. She feels weird, and because she can hear other people's thoughts. And we've got Twilight, where we've got this girl who's a virgin who feels weird because she's so clumsy, and she's like an old person because she reads 19th century literature and has a big vocabulary. And then she says this. She says this all the time. She feels weird and like she doesn't fit in. And then we've got, this main character in 50 Shades of Grey And
Anna.
I read the book, which is long, and I've totally forgotten her name, Anna, which
Anna,
can't say much for the book. And she's like, she thinks she's never had sex because she just hasn't found the right person, and because she's
never been attracted to any man ever at the age of like 22.
Right. And she feels weird, and like she never fit in, and she doesn't understand why anyone would like her. It's like, why like, why do people want that story?
And I just like felt I hated it because 50 Shades reminded me so much of Twilight, and I actually like Twilight, and something about the characters in Twilight I'm much more drawn to or believe in a lot more. Like, I don't totally believe in them at times, but Anna was just like this horrible watered down version of Bella for me.
I actually liked Bella. I mean, everyone was saying that she was anti-feminist. I'm pretty sure I wrote a blog post that was saying it was more feminist than people give it credit for, and I still do believe that. I think that Bella as a character has a strength about her in going after what she wants, at least towards the end of the book, and I think that's interesting. I don't feel like Anna was a character that made a whole ton of sense to me. I want to know why people are so attracted to that kind of story of a rich, powerful man. Maybe it has something to do with the idea of a bad guy. And it just like totally makes me really love Bella that much more. Is that, it's a weird difference between them. That Bella, like, I mean, Edward's so worried about hurting her all the time, and Bella's like, no, I like this, and she wants that, you know, and she eventually does get it by becoming a vampire, and Anna's like, no, I don't want it, but she still lets him do it to her all the time, and
it's totally like that. Well, I want him to love me, so I'm gonna let him do these things that I'm not really into.
And then I'm going to cry about it later when he's not around. I mean, it's so disturbing. I mean, Bella's fighting for these things that she wants, and someone's refusing to give them to her, which it's totally Edward's choice to not want to do something with her, you know? Yeah. But I do think it's cool that Bella knows what she wants, and she's okay with drawing that line between being hurt because she wants to be and because there's an aspect of it that she does like, and being hurt because she doesn't want to be. And it's so interesting to me, the emotional manipulation too of Gray. His sayings to her, like, oh, do you really not like this because society has told you it's not okay to like it, or do you actually like it?
That's the kind of stuff that I hate, because that's like the mental games I play with myself, because I like constantly question myself and the way I think of my motives and everything all the time, and it's like he's doing that to her, and I hate that, 'cause it's like he seems like the kind of person who could talk his way around anything and convince you of anything with his manipulative monologue.
It's disturbing. I personally didn't like their relationship at all. It made me feel very uncomfortable for Anna, especially in how he was trying to like talk her into doing things that she really didn't want to do, and making her question whether or not she really didn't want to do those things. Like, there are points where she says that did feel good, but I was still afraid to do it. But like, I think helping her build up to it through some kind of conversation or something.
Yeah, it just seemed like a lot of coercing. Not like, this is an open relationship where we're going to talk about our wants and stuff. It was definitely like, well, I either need this or my way or the highway kind of thing.
And I do think people might say, well, he had that contract that they could talk about things, you know, and it's like, no, that wasn't really a conversation. These are my demands.
They're like ultimatums, basically. Like, well, either you do this, this, and this, or you're out. And
it did seem, too, like she was worried that if she didn't say yes to those things, he would leave her. Do you think the stories are telling women, though, that they should be like victims, you know? Like,
I think it's telling them that it's more fun to be the innocent one, you know? Like, it's more fun to be corrupted than to do corrupting, and probably more acceptable and more, I don't know. I think it is telling us that we should want to be, because it's more desirable for some reason, but I'm not sure exactly why.
If we're uncorrupted, and we're pure, and we're demure, but we can talk back sometimes, because that's cute and endearing, and guys like that, You know, like,
right.
It's telling us that if we want to get a guy, that's how we have to act. And I think that's...
But it's kind of, I don't know, it's weird because it's also kind of a reversal, though, from, you know how people talk about in movies a lot, there are these very, like, average-looking, maybe slightly overweight dudes with, like, super hot women in movies, constantly. Like, you see that all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, average-looking guy married to, like, supermodel woman. And these books, the main audience is, like, women. So it's these, like, insecure, clumsy girls with these, like, really, you know, sexy guys, which, like, if it was a book written for a guy, like, I don't know, I guess whoever it's written for, they create that character, and that character is someone you could picture as yourself or similar to yourself in some way, because they're inexperienced, insecure, not suave or whatever, you know, because I guess you're supposed to be putting yourself in that position, and then you meet this very intelligent, rich, whatever person to have a relationship with. So I think that's
a nicer way of thinking about things. I think that
and not that that's, like, good, but I guess that's part of the reason behind, or the motivation behind it, the motivation not to write something that's progressive, because people aren't going to enjoy it as much, because it's harder maybe for women who are used to constantly feeling not good enough and being compared to, you know, whatever is seen as the ideal in society. It would be hard for them to put themselves in the place of a powerful, you know, successful, sexy woman who, like, knows what she wants. Like, reading that book, maybe no one would be able to relate. I don't know.
Yeah, but the characters' arcs are not as real as the stories made for men in those situations. Like, on TV, we have characters like, gosh, what's his name? He's in Knocked Up.
Seth Rogen?
Yeah, we've got characters like Seth Rogen. I mean, he's not terrible looking, but he's not super attractive, and there are movies where he's overweight and, you know, doesn't have a job and whatever, and none of the characters that play women in these roles are like that. They only think they're like that, you know? Mm-hmm. And we have these characters go through real problems, you know? They're unemployed. They meet this wonderful woman, and she doesn't really like them at first, and so they muck around and make a mess of things, and eventually good things kind of happen. But when you think about the endings, they're not like, oh, amazing and Prince Charming and perfect. They tell, like, stories that are real, you know? And I feel like for these novels, they have, you know, women who think they're not good enough, but all the other characters in the story are telling them they're amazing all the time.
Yeah,
you know?
No, that's like the totally also why the males in these stories are so perfect, because they're just like, you are a supermodel, you know, like, you are the sexiest woman I've ever seen, and you don't realize how amazing you are. And yeah, the guys don't get that feedback, you know, in movies,
in fact, because they get the opposite feedback. They get people telling them, you need to get a job, you need to get off my couch, you need to be more awesome because you're really annoying me right now. Like, they have people who try to kick them in the pants to go do things, you know, and get better and work out. And, you know, I feel like it just places unrealistic expectations on women. Like, it's not okay to be pretty. It's not okay to be smart and read a lot. It's not okay to have a job and getting into publishing, because also you need to have this perfect boyfriend. And even if you are great and beautiful, if people aren't telling you you're great and beautiful all the time, you're still not winning.
You're not.
You know?
Yeah. 50 Shades of Grey. That was our little book review discussion thoughts and stuff. We love to get responses if anybody has any.
Yeah, do you disagree, agree? I know all our English major friends think we're crazy for liking Twilight, but clearly we have just proven that we do have some standards.
Yes.
So, if you'd like to disagree, we're all for hearing that. Or if you have other ideas about 50 Shades of Grey and why people like it so much, I am insanely curious.
Yeah, me too. So feel free to leave those comments. But thanks for joining us for another episode of Post-grad seM.A.ntics.